from other parts of the world started wandering up here, and some of the natives decided to settle in more permanent villages, like this one you see to the right. This is the China village, where we'll stop after we turn around. And we're going to stay here for about an hour. You get to explore what we like to think of as a living museum. It's an area that we preserve just like this, kind of a snapshot of what Jim used to see during freight runs. It's not representative of a modern village, but more like a time capsule. Plus, we're going to learn about fish camp, which you can see coming up to the right. Fish wheel in the water, smokehouse on shore, and our expert on salmon, Delana, with the catch of the day. Hello over there.
Hello everyone, here I have a king salmon, and when you all turn around and come back upriver, I'll show you how we prepare this for our dogs and tell you a little about fish camp life.
Okay, good introduction to the subsistence lifestyle coming. It's fishing in the summer, trapping in the winter, hunting in the fall. In fact, if you look at these woods over to the right, imagine all these leaves are yellow, and a native family is hunting for moose or caribou, kind of like those actually right over there. If you check to the right or on your monitor. Now isn't that a coincidence? Yeah, we knew they'd be there. This is Riverboat Discovery, not Riverboat Sit Around. We like for you to see them in this setting while emphasizing again how nothing goes to waste in our Alaska Native culture. A time of good hunting brings with it need for food, piles for clothing and shelter, gut, bone, sinew, antlers. Whatever you don't need, you make something out of it. Now what you see as pet over here is the domesticated Rangifer tyrannus. That's the same genus and species as the wild indigenous caribou. These are reindeer, but in all the ways that matter, virtually indistinguishable from their wild cousins other than being a little smaller. For example, they all have the same type of coat that changes with the season. They'll get progressively darker over the summer, shedding out the rest of that heavier white coat from last winter. The whole animal will be about the same color as the antlers eventually. But when the next winter sets in, they grow another thick white coat and always have natural camouflage.
Wow.
Great big feet, too. Those wide split hooves helps them keep their footing on snow or spongy tundra. When their food is buried in the wintertime, they can shovel right down through several feet of snow to get to the moss and lichen underneath. And in fact, that word caribou has to do with their feet. It comes from the Mi'kmaq people originally, and it means deer who paws the ground. Both male and female grow antlers, too. It's the only type of deer where that happens normally. And both sexes will drop them later in the year because they're not permanent like horns. You see how all the antlers are in velvet right now? That furry layer of skin protecting the blood supply underneath. But once they get into the rut, they'll start scraping all that velvet off, kind of like an itchy old scab. They'll rub it off against trees, then have bone or mahogany colored antlers for a bit. And after they reproduce, all the antlers are going to fall to the ground. Males lose theirs first, females a little later because they've evolved to defend the young. Then the females lose theirs and everybody grows new ones. So what you see out there is just this year's growth, and they're only now kind of getting started. Makes a right and joins with the waters of the largest glacial-fed river system on the planet. This is the Tanana ahead of us. And as you can see by looking out over the valley, the Tanana is an entirely different type of river system. It's all confined to one channel like the China. There are numerous waterways and sloughs and main channels that all shift around throughout the year. That's the one thing you can count on in the Tanana is change. There's nothing stable about it. These great big sandbars are made up of silt, which was crushed up rock in the Alaska Range. You can actually see some of the mountains today, again about 11 o'clock off the bow, a few of them peeking out there. And what happens is, in the summertime, all of the snow that accumulated in the Alaska Range the previous winter will melt and bring the Tanana up to the point that it can look like one big channel all the way across. And the Chena rises with it, which is how it gets to the point that it covers up a lot of this ground you've seen on either side. The mud and some of the gravel that seems like it ought to be underwater. But that's why our river comes up. It's not the way, what you usually think of, like it rains a bunch and then all of a sudden we have a lot of water. Because we only get about 12 inches of precipitation in the average year. Rain and snow combined is all that falls out of the sky, just a foot.
12 inches?
It's all that water in cold storage in the mountains that'll run out and make everything rise. In fact, those planks that we had to kind of, it was steep when you were coming out of the gift shop and onto the boat. Those could be near level by the time we're in the middle of the summer. But then we get past the peak of the summer when it begins to cool off. Then that big faucet shuts off. Everything drops back down and it starts to look like this again in the fall. So it's hot sunny days that bring up our rivers. Now fortunately the Chena doesn't flood. One of you was asking me about that when you see all these houses right up against the bank. And we did have a flood in 1967, which was a mess. About 95% of our streets were underwater. But then our municipal leaders called in the Army Corps of Engineers and they built the Chena River Flood Control Facility. So now, if the Chena should get too high, there's this great big gate that they can shut, which will divert the Chena still into the Tanana, but a different spot about 25 miles upstream from where we are now. So that high water can't make it down this far and pose a threat. But we would have absolutely flooded again a number of times since 1967 if that hadn't been built. So we're very glad it's there. The Chena River was dredged by the Army Corps as well back in the 70s when it started to get a little more temperamental. The Tanana, though, can never be dredged because every 24 hours 100,000 tons of silt passes by the main channel, so it will fill back in as soon as you can dig it out. And again, another footnote as you look to the right, we start to put the Tanana Valley out there to our stern. The main channel of that river used to be just off the starboard side of the boat. It was 30 feet deep, going about 6-7 miles an hour. And then 15-20 years ago, the river just changed its mind. The main channel is way, way across the way by those tall spruce trees, and this filled in. But now that it's coming up again, and we can kind of see the Chena sort of cutting into one of the banks, and who knows, the whole thing may turn around again at some point. It'll be completely different years from now. These wild braided river systems just do whatever they want to do.
As Jared said, my name is Selena. My music name is Crocodile, which is happy bird. I'm quite right off the bat in music. My family is from the small village of Calais, which in my native language is called Gaffaga, and it means king stands place. And it's located along the River.
Well, that's a good way to name something over either what it produces or what you hope it will, obviously. And we want to learn how the salmon get produced or processed and preserved. Maybe though, could we start with all these different things around you, describe the different areas of the camp?
Of course. So the fish camp you see here is very similar to what you would see along the Yukon or Tanana rivers throughout the summer months. Each summer, families pack up and move about 30 miles away from their family's village to their family's respective fish camp. And my family's fish camp is 20 miles from Hot River. Now the centerpiece to every fish camp is the fish wheel. It is the efficient fish catching machine that allows us to catch enough salmon to provide for our families and dog teams throughout the winter months. Back on shore is our campus wall tent, and that's where we stay each summer. Next to it is our air drying rack, and that's where we hang our salmon before it goes into the smokehouse. And the smokehouse is a large dog you see behind me. It is key to turning the salmon into a fully preserved food source. And after it's done smoking, we store it in the cache, which is a structure up on stilts. And it has to be up on stilts to keep the animals from getting into it. And speaking of animals, the boxes you see over there between the tents are where the dogs would stay each summer. And we always bring dogs to fish camp. They act as a natural alarm system.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if a bear wanders into camp, that's not only a threat to your family, but weeks or months of work could be destroyed, and you can't get that back when you're facing a long winter. Speaking of that work, by the way, let's go back to your cutting table now. What was this you showed us when we came downstream?
Yeah, so this is a king salmon, and here in the interior we get 3 types of salmon. A single run of the king and silver, and 2 runs of the chum. Now, since the chum is a slightly lesser quality salmon, we usually like to reserve that for the dogs. But since the chum aren't running just yet, I have this king from last year to demonstrate the basic dog food cut for all of you. I started by cutting off the head, separating the 2 fillets from the backbone, and leaving it connected at the tail so I can hang it on the air dry rack. Now there's still a little bit of meat left on this backbone, and since nothing is ever wasted in my culture, we would give this to the dogs here at fish camp. And if this were a head of a higher quality salmon, we would make fish head soup and serve it to our elders because it's considered a delicacy.
Bon appetit.
How is fish head soup, by the way?
I don't know, JR, I'm not old enough.
Yeah, no, that's right, no, because the elders eat first. So if there's any she's going to have to wait like 40 years, and then maybe she'll find out. Now, why all of this slicing into the fillet? What's that help?
Well, I'm scoring the salmon, which is making diagonal cuts through the flesh onto the skin. And this actually creates more surface area, so the smoke can work deeper into the salmon, further dehydrating it.
And you'll see when she gets done and holds it up. I always like that for a picture. Every one of those vents, or cuts rather, opens a vent down into the fillet, so that through this process it can lose all of its water weight, but none of the nutritional value. If you've got 100 dogs in your kennel, each dog eats 1 salmon every day for 5 or 6 months of winter. That's why you got to be able to harvest and process a lot. Fish camp can be hundreds of salmon a day, and as you'll see as she holds this up, a little help from gravity. That's nice and open now, dressed out, ready for the next step. Very nicely done, Delana, as always.
Thank you.
Why will not just take that into the smokehouse now? You see it's better to leave it exposed out in the open?
Exactly, so we never like to put a wedge of these salmon into the smokehouse because it might mold. So right now, I'm just going to hang it on the air dry rack until it gets a nice sheet of glaze on it, and then it'll go into the smokehouse. Now keep in mind, every family in every region has their own techniques and preferences for smoking salmon. Like I said earlier, this is dog food. So go to the smokehouse for up to 2 weeks, fully dehydrated, weighs less than a pound, and looks something similar to this.
Yeah, I mean that's like rawhide almost. You bundle it up like firewood, take it on dog sleds all winter, and keep your team fed. Speaking on behalf of humanity, though, that doesn't look like it'd be an awful lot of fun for your family to gnaw on. I mean, my grandma didn't even have teeth. So how about when we're making salmon that's for people?
There are several differences. First, we would start with a higher quality salmon, preferably fresh one, and then wash it really well. We like fillets too, but we also like long vertical pieces called salmon strips. After that, we would soak this in a brine. My family likes to use honey, brown sugar, and salt. Then onto the air dry rack, and after into the smokehouse. But for a much shorter time, like 2 or 3 days, because we like much softer texture. Finally, the wood we would use for ourselves would be cotton or alderwood because they give so much sweeter flavor. But for the dogs, spruce wood, driftwood, anything really, they're not too picky.
No, I've never seen that be a problem. I remember that good recipe of yours, though, with the alder smoke for later. While we make our way up to the mooring area, could you give us an idea here of what the village experience is about?
Well, last stay because the guys and I are excited to show you around the cheetah village. This village is a replica of the original cheetah village that Captain Kidd visited while running trains. When it became inaccessible by boat, it largely ceased to exist. So the Bigley family built the living museum you see here. And this village contains 100 cabins and artifacts that were relocated from the original cheetah village. All the cabins are built by hand, by native craftspeople, using the same traditional tools and methods. Like the post office you see here. You can't actually mail anything, but you can get your grant book personalized after the tour today.
Yeah, David will post office cabin with the flagpole by it, and if you didn't get a book on the boat, that's fine, because they'll have some out on shore, so you can do all that at once. As far as the tour go now, Delana, are we going to do that right with you, or just kind of wander around on our own?
So both, when you come on the shore, we're going to divide you into groups and take you around to 3 stops. One of those stops will be the cabin with the moose. And don't worry if that isn't your first stop, everyone gets to see everything here at the village. You'll see the reindeer again. We'll teach you how the ancient Athabascans survived the climate and how the nomadic people transitioned into permanent cabins with village life. The tour will be about 25 minutes long. You'll have some time afterwards to explore the village on your own. The only thing we ask is please respect the rope boundaries for your safety and the protection of artifacts. If you have any questions after the tour, I'll be right over there at fish camp and there'll be guides around as well. Well, welcome to the Cheetah Village, everyone, in Anabasi, which means thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
My name is Maya. I was born and raised in Tanana. My parents are from Tanana, which is a village located 120 miles west of Fairbanks. I recently graduated from Lathrop High School and plan to study in the medical field here at our local university in Fairbanks.
Good job.
We are now in the Tanana Valley, the heart of Athabascan country, on the ancestral lands of the Danaw people. Today, we'll be sharing with you how the Athabascans skillfully survived in this environment for over 10,000 years and transitioned to village life and Western culture in the past century. Today, we'll have 3 short stops on our tour of the village, so please be sure to stay with us because we'll be rotating with other groups and we want to make sure you get a chance to see everything. At the end of the tour, you'll have some free time to roam around, ask questions, and take any pictures that you may have missed. Around us, you can see some examples of the largest game animals in Alaska. Over here to your far right, you can see the example of a hide of a grizzly bear. In the middle, the moose, and closest to me is the caribou. Over here, you can see an example of a full-size bull moose. His name is Bruce. He was taken just north of us in the White Mountains and has a trophy-sized 73.5-inch rack. The moose were very important to the Athabascan people. While caribou travel in herds, the moose are solitary, tending to travel alone. So therefore, the Athabascans became very skilled at calling the moose. One way to do so was by scraping the shoulder blade from a previous kill up against a tree like Melody will show us. Isn't she a skilled hunter? Now, because male moose are very territorial, that noise might attract a full-size bull moose into the area. The second way to call a moose was verbally, using a birch bark megaphone like this. The hunter would imitate the bull moose's mating call using a deep, guttural, grunting noise. Would you like a demonstration?
Yes.
Here, moosey, 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 moosey. Now, once the real mating call had called the moose into the area, the hunter would then use the bone-tipped spear to provoke the animal. The hunter would then plant it at a steep angle, and when the moose came charging to stomp the hunter, it would impale himself on the end of the spear, and all the brave hunter had to do was roll out from underneath the heavy falling animal. Once the meat was processed, the hide was used for shelter, lashings, and clothing. To start the process, they would scrape all of the fur and skin using sharpened shin bones from a caribou and a moose. This left them with a piece of raw hide like this, which can be made into strips called babiche. Babiche was used as lashings, to web snowshoes, and as all-purpose rope. Now, obviously, rawhide is much too stiff to make into any type of clothing, so it was soaked in a solution of water and fermented moose brains. This milky fluid had acidic enzymes that would help break down the tough fibers of the rawhide. Next, they would scrape the hide using this tool called the clabass, which is similar to the northern ulu, except it has a serrated edge for scraping rather than cutting. After weeks and weeks of soaking, scraping, and wringing out that hide, it was reduced to a soft material like this. And to preserve all of that hard work, they would stretch the hide over a campfire and smoke it. You can always tell a true native tanned hide by the rich, smoky smell. Now, let me share some traditional regalia with you. This is a ceremonial maiden's dress. And a ceremonial chief's coat. They are both museum quality garments made from tanned moose hides using those traditional methods Maya just explained. After Western contact, the Athabascans traded furs for glass seed beads and became very well known for their beautiful and intricate beadwork designs. All the flowers have symbolic meanings. On this maiden's dress, you will find flowers commonly found in her village like the bluebell, or our state flower, the forget-me-not. On this chief's coat, the flowers symbolize animal tracks in hopes of bringing the Athabasca man good luck on the trap line. Both of these garments are trimmed with beaver. The buttons on the chief's coat are cross-sections of moose antler. Now, the buttons on the maiden's dress are cross-section of caribou antler. Now, the garment you see me and many of the other guides are wearing are called kuspuks, which are everyday working garments. They are always handmade and often from a family pattern, but I really think you're going to like this next piece. One second. Now I think you're going to like this next piece. Maya is wearing an Athabascan Yukon-style woman's winter parka. It is all traditional, except that big zipper going down the middle. That's just there, so we can get it on and off quickly on these warm summer days. Traditionally, it would have been sewn pullover style. The main body of the parka is beaver, which has been sheared for design. It is trimmed with calfskin, river otter, and timber wolf. But get ready, she's going to show you the sunshine ruff. The outer part of the ruff is timber wolf, and the inner part is wolverine. Wolverine is always sewn closest to the face because it has oils in its fur that helps prevent frostbite. Any leftover pieces would be made into these tassels, which are wolverine tipped with timber wolf. Maya would sew these onto her parka to show that her family caught that tricky wolverine and they're skilled hunters. Now she's going to turn around and show you the designs on the back of the parka. Skin sewing and beading techniques were passed down generation after generation. Each family had their own original design. For instance, the artist who made this parka is from Fort Yukon, and this is her family's wild rose pattern. Often, if an Athabascan woman were to travel to another village, you can tell where she's from just by looking at the design on the back of the parka. Thank you, Maya. Now, if you didn't get the picture you wanted, someone will be here to model that parka after the tour. Some interesting facts about that parka is it weighs 23 pounds and is made for 40 below weather. So it does get quite hot on these warm summer days. It took 8 months to make and is appraised for $35,000. But it is priceless to us, so if you do come take a look at it, we ask that you please do not touch it. Now, at our next stop, we'll tell you why there's grass on the roofs, how cabins like these ones were made, and we'll also show you some more furs found in the interior of Alaska. So if you please follow me down that trail.
I think so.